A VC-backed company means that there's already venture capitalists that have invested in it. Well, you are now stuck with them forever. They could be jerks, they could be associates that just graduated from Stanford Business School with an MBA and don't even know how to spell board. If they just put this woman on the board,
she would have known. She would have been able to advise them on what to do.
Yes,
right?
This was a $265 million company. That was the biggest risk they had, in my assessment, that they weren't even aware of.
You've been on lots of different types of boards, right? We've talked about a few of them. You've talked about family-owned businesses. I know you've been on a few of those, publicly traded companies, privately held companies, VC-backed companies, all sorts. So what are your kind of thoughts on like how are these boards different and how do you navigate? And not a lot of people have been on all these different types of boards. So
and one size does not fit all.
Right.
So let me say that up front. And sure. As the companies grow, it's natural to have slightly increasing formality in things and a little bit more organization. Very, very early stage startup and early stage companies can be a little bit more informal, just more like meetings of the mind, so to speak. One of the inflection points is when you bring on your first outside investors.
Then you have to.
Then you got to get a little
up.
bit more serious. When you bring on your first independent director, you may want to look a little bit more professional than you did before they got there. So you start to upgrade the processes. But it doesn't have to be an overly formal, can I get a second? Oh, there's a second. You don't need the full Robert's Rules of Order. But and depending, for example, a VC-backed company means that there's already venture capitalists that have invested in it. And so the chances are very good that at least one of them will be on the board. Very seldom will they invest with no board seats. And often it may be, if there's multiple venture firms in a round, then they may pick one, or they may pick two out of the round to have representatives on the board. Well, you are now stuck with them forever. Okay. No matter who they are, they could be great assets. They could be jerks. They could be associates that just graduated from Stanford Business School with an MBA and don't even know how to spell board. So you don't know what you're going to get. You can lobby for a more senior person, but that board, of course, the VCs tend to have an overweight, because the founders are very sensitive to working not only to upset on the other hand, I've got one of my boards where the founders put in $15 million of his own money. And so the board really, it's his deal. We're there to support him. We're there to help him.
Right.
And
They're outside advisors versus being inside.
Exactly. Even though we're on the board and we have a vote, when you have controlling interest in the company, the board does have a vote. But if you have majority, you can vote anybody off the board you don't want. You don't have to actually take their advice. That's a big fallacy with owners of private companies creating boards. Well, I don't want to have to listen to somebody else. Well, if you own the company, you appoint the board members, or you take them off the board if you don't want them. Sorry, we're done. Thanks. And the stage of the company, sometimes the industry, but the stage is more important. Earlier stage, mid stage, the growth of the company. You get also other issues with the board have to do with what business the company is in, because some businesses have a lot more compliance issues, a lot more regulatory issues. So if you have a company that you got the Federal Trade Commission, Federal Communications Commitment, you've got the IRS, the SEC, you've got every single agency, then you've got the state governments, the Secretary of State of each, and there's regulatory issues. In certain businesses, those can become critical. For instance, if you've got a call center and you're regulated by the Federal Trade Commission, okay, if you're in any kind of communications, you're regulated by the Federal Communications Commission. Well, it's depending on the level that you're in that industry, it may help to have expertise on the regulatory side as well. I mean, I could tell more stories, but it's one quick, make this story very fast. Was a company that was thinking of going public. They had a call center. They were just thinking about how to put a board together. And they said, well, why should we have a board? And I said, well, you have a board because it might tell you things you're not aware of. Well, we're aware of everything. Well, okay, you got a call center and you don't know anything about the Federal Trade Commission, and you're processing this many credit cards for this much volume. You don't have money in the bank. It was a whole bunch of factors, but I said, you're highly at risk by being investigated by the Federal Trade Commission. And if they enjoined you from billing the credit cards, you could be out of business in 90 days. They said, well, we know everything about it. They were going to be acquired, so they never put the board together. The acquisition fell apart. I said, why did it fall apart? They checked to find out it fell apart because the buyer had concerns about their Federal Trade Commission compliance.
Oh, no.
In the process of recruiting board members, I was ready to put a woman on the board who had been an attorney with the Federal Trade Commission, and now she was the head of consumer affairs for one of the biggest companies in the country. And they didn't put the board together, so she didn't get on the board, whatnot. The deal fell apart. They were investigated by the Federal Trade Commission later. I think that the buyer asked about their compliance.
Right, and then it triggered something.
They looked to see. They got investigated. They settled it with a $22.5 million fine. Okay? If they just put this woman on the board,
she would have known, and she would have been able to advise them on what to do,
yes,
right?
Yes, just like that. So sometimes, and that was a very unique, because that was a very targeted, very high risk. This was a $265 million company. That was the biggest risk they had, in my assessment, that they weren't even aware of. But normally you like board members to have a slightly broader set of skills, and then also have that added layer of judgment that comes from the maturity, from having been through the wars.